get ready to move. You're not coming back again. They could leave behind. That leads us to our second point as we look then at verses 12 through 15. And the second point is we've got to stick with God's plan. Now, here's what you need to know. As the nation of Israel approached the promised land with Moses still in charge. Remember, we talked last time, Moses went up on the mountain and God said, "You're done," and he died there and God buried him and nobody knows where the body of Moses is. But before Moses was dead, they had approached the promised land and there were 2.5 tribes, the tribe of Manasseh, and the tribe of Gad, and the tribe of, I got to look at my notes here. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh. As they approached the cross the Jordan, and they're now on the west side of the river. And they looked around at the land that was around them, and they said, "We kind of like it here. We like what we see here. There's good land for us to grow our crops. There's good place for us to have great big fields where we can graze our cattle. So we don't want to enter the promised land. We want to stick right here." And for whatever reason, Moses said, "Okay, this now is your land." So he addresses, now Joshua turns to these people in verses 12 through 15. "And to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, 'Remember the word that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is providing you a place of rest and will give you this land. Your wives, your little ones, your livestock shall remain in the land that Moses gave you beyond the Jordan. But all the men of valor among you shall pass over armed before your brothers and shall help them until the Lord gives rest to your brothers as he has to you, and they also take possession of the land that the Lord your God is giving them. Then you shall return to the land of your possession and shall possess it, the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan toward the sunrise.'" Reuben was the oldest of the 12 sons of Jacob. Gad was another one of the sons of Jacob. Manasseh was the oldest son of Joseph. Jacob and Joseph both died in Israel. In fact, Scripture says they carried Joseph's bones out of Israel so that he could be in the promised land. But these 2.5 tribes got permission from Moses to say, just outside the promised land. Moses wanted to make sure, though, that while you can stay out here, that doesn't mean you don't have to join us and fight with your brothers to make sure we take possession of the promised land. These 2.5 tribes were obligated to go and continue to fight until they've taken full possession of the land. Like many of our military soldiers today, they were called to serve in a place different from their homes, sometimes without a furlough for a long time. Now, me personally, and I'm just speaking for myself, I'm not sure why these 2.5 tribes wanted to come so close to the promised land and not go in. There seems to be an issue there in my mind. I think of these 2.5 tribes kind of like borderline believers. They're in God's family, but they want to do things their own way rather than going along with God's plan. History shows us many, many centuries later, when the nation of Assyria decided to come down and invade the northern kingdom of Israel, because by that time it was split into 2 kingdoms. When Assyria came down to invade the northern kingdom, you know who the first Israelites who fell were? The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. It just makes me wonder why they would choose a place actually closer to Assyria than the tribes that were to the west of the Jordan. I really think they should have stuck with God's plan. I think it would have been better for them. Now, they didn't, and God gave it to them, and we have to understand this is the way that it happened. But my point, I want to point out here is what attracted them to this land outside of the promised land instead of going into the promised land with their brothers and sisters? Well, it was fertile and it was lush, and that's understandable. But sometimes in our lives, that can be an indication that we really would rather trust on what we can do for ourselves rather than placing ourselves totally in God's hands. The people who went into the land, into the promised land, were going to have to fight the battles. So were these other tribes as well. But ultimately, they were going to have to do all the work to repopulate what is really, and we've been there, what's really kind of a dry, barren kind of land. And so if you find a lush spot, it looks very desirable. But sometimes, again, that can be an indication you're trusting in the land, not in the creator of the land. Sometimes it's dangerous to live on the border. Too many people want to be saved. They want to say, yes, Lord, I'm a sinner, and I know I need to be saved, and so I accept the free gift that Jesus gives me of salvation, but now I'm going to go on after my own priorities. I'm going to seek after my own comfort. I'm going to continue doing things my way. It's never a good situation. And we find ultimately that those who stuck with God's plan, went into the promised land, wiped out the people that were there, they were the ones that really received far more of God's blessing on their lives than these 2.5 tribes that decided, we'll come close, but we don't want to go all the way in. Thirdly, verses 6 through 18. You've got to stay obedient and faithful. Look at the response of the people. These are the people that Joshua just spoken to, the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half-tribe Manasseh. They answered Joshua, all that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go, just as we obeyed Moses in all things. Can I pause right there? Did these people obey Moses in all things? No, thank you. No. When they were in the wilderness, remember I mentioned last time, there came a time in the history of this nation where God confided in Moses and said, hey, Moses, I'm going to wipe them all out. I've had enough of them. And as I said last week, if you've been a parent of a small child, you know exactly what that feeling is. I've had enough. I'd just rather wipe them out. God says that. And yet these people say, as we were obedient to Moses, so we're going to be obedient to you. And I have to think that wasn't very much of a comfort to Joshua at that time.